Hi guys, this is Rohit Tandon from the team Grey Edge, and I am back again with the video related to the Revit Structure 2020 new features. So here we have a list which consists of some new features that have been added to Revit Structure 2020. The first one is about how can we modify the steel connections. The second one deals with how can we propagate those steel connections. The third one deals with how can we add a rebar in an in-place stair family. The fourth one is about the multi-rebar annotations, and the last one deals with how we can move or copy our rebar. So let's just move on to Revit. Here we have an already created steel structure in which we have just placed a connection here. Now what we want to do is we just want to create a custom connection out of this. Earlier when I used to select this connection, I used to find the modify parameters option here in the ribbon itself. But now from Revit 2020 version, this feature has been moved into the edit type. So here we can find the modify parameters option in which we can click on edit and modify the parameters as required. So with this enhancement, now our connections also behave as a system family, just like our walls, our floors, or our slabs. So what we can do is, just to create a new connection, I'll click on duplicate here and give it a new name. So let's just try and create a clip angle with 9 bolts. Now I can move to modify parameters tab and make the necessary adjustments. So I'll just do some of the adjustments here of selecting the appropriate size, and let's just make the changes in the number of bolts here. We can just zoom into this 3D view to just have a look at the changes that are being done. So I need to change the spacing between the bolts as well. Once done, I'll be able to create a new custom connection for myself. Now what I can do is just simply hit on OK, hit on OK again, and we can see that our connection gets updated. Now if I'll just select this connection and have a look at the type selector here, I can find that a new type has been created inside the clip angle family. So this is an enhancement that has been done in 2020. Earlier we used to get a new connection created, we used to increase the file size unnecessarily, but now we get a new type within the same family itself. Now the easier thing with this is that I can switch my select my connection, and I can switch between these types as well. Now moving on to the next enhancement, which says propagating steel connections. Now again I'll just concentrate on the same connection here. I would like to copy this connection to other parts of this structure as well. Now earlier we used to select and we used to use this copy tool from the modify tab to copy these connections, which was again a tedious task. Now from the Revit 2020 version, I can simply select the connection, right click on it, and I can use this propagate connection option here. Now what this propagate connection option does is it tells the Revit engine to just select and check whatever are the similar regions where this connection can be placed and place those connections there. So all this is done by the Revit engine in the background so that you can continue with your further work. Now this, if we want to check, we can come down to the status bar and we have an option here which says background processes. So if I'll just try select this connection and hit on propagate connection, we can see that the propagate connection option starts over here. Revit starts calculating the areas where it can place the connection and also places those connections. Also, what we could have noticed was that for a limited period of time, Revit had changed the color of all the concerned beams and columns and also the connections. That color allows us to understand or notice the places where the new connections have been placed. What else I can do is I can select a connection, right click, and I'll try and select all the connections that have been placed, and from the instance properties I can actually check the number of connections that have been actually placed. Now if I just want to change the color which was being displayed while those connections were placed, I can move to the options of Revit, go to graphics. Here we can find the calculating option which allows us to change the color that Revit shows while it's calculating all the elements. Now the next enhancement in the list is how can we add rebars in the InPlace Stair family. So here, over here in this model, we have already modeled an InPlace family here. So this is an InPlace Stair family that has been already created here. Now here we can see that there have been rebars that have been already modeled here. So if I'll select this staircase that has been actually modeled in place here, which we can check from here, we can see that Revit automatically gives us the option of adding a rebar. This option was not available in the earlier versions. So if we try to place a rebar in this staircase here, what I can do is we can simply select it, click on rebar. I can go for this sketch rebar option, or if you are comfortable, we can select any of these options of rebar available from here, and you can place that rebar in this staircase. So let's just try and sketch a new rebar and place it here. So I'll just click on sketch rebar. I'll just click on sketch rebar, select my element, and then I can sketch whatever is the rebar required. So let's just try and sketch something. So from the contextual tab, I'll just take the line tool and I'll just try and create a single rebar element here. We can select the dia of the rebar that is required here, and I can simply click on finish. So this allows us to create a rebar here. I can very well select the rebar, set the number of elements that you require. For example, I'll select the minimum clear spacing. I can also set the view visibility here. I can simply switch to the 3D view and just check the rebars that have been placed. Similarly, we can come in and also model the remaining rebar as required. So again, if required, I can go sketch rebar, and this time I'll just try and sketch the other main member of the rebar. Again, just select the dia of the rebar, and we can simply hit on finish. Okay, so it just now allows us to create more than one loop, so I'll just keep one loop there. Again, select the rebar, go back to minimum clear spacing, set the view visibility, and once again I can just check the placement in the 3D view. Similarly, we can go ahead with the distribution bars required. So again, we can select the staircase, hit on rebar, click on sketch rebar if required, or what we can do is we can simply select a rebar from the rebar shape browser present here. I'll just switch my placement to perpendicular to cover since I want to place a distribution bar. I can select the area where I want to place it, change the dia of the bar, and again I can set the number required. So I'll try and change the number again. So we can see that Revit automatically distributes this bar throughout the staircase. I can again just change the view visibility so that the bar is visible in the 3D view, and we can just have a look. So in the similar manner, we can do the other rebarring of this staircase as well, and this is the final result that we can get. Alright, so in this project we can see that the rebarring has been done on both the sides and complete. So let's just now move on to the next feature, which is regarding the multi-rebar annotations. Now if I have a look at this project here, which already has some rebars there, and I just want to provide some details to this rebar. Now from the Revit 2020 version, what we can do is we can move to the Annotate tab. We get the multi-rebar annotations here, which we can use to provide dimensions to our rebars that have been placed in a particular element. Now this option was available earlier as well, but now there has been an enhancement that has been placed here. Now if I just select this the linear option here, the linear multi-rebar annotation option here, and I select any particular rebar element, I'll be able to place its annotation, which shows its detailing, how the distribution has been done here. Now from the Revit 2020 version, what we can do is this annotation can also be made to show the distance from the fabrication point as well. So if I just want to show this distance between the first member of this rebar and the starting point of the beam, I can very well select this annotation, click on select dimensions. I have this edit witness line option, and I can snap to the end face of the element here. So we can see that we get this instruction written here which says select references from the structural rebar. So I can select a particular endpoint, and that actually allows me to show the distance of the rebar from the face of that particular beam. So if we have any shuttering placed around our beam, we can also show the distance of that particular first rebar from that shuttering there. If you try, we can do this again. So I can select the dimension, click on edit witness line, and I can show the distance from this end as well. So this again further helps us to detail our elements properly. So we can just show the starting point of the rebar from the face of this element as well. Similarly, if we move on to some other elements, like in this case there is rebar placed at a particular angle. So in this case, what I can do is I can make use of this aligned multi-rebar annotation here. So we can select, click, and place the annotation as required. So again, in this case, I can click on select dimension, click on edit witness lines, and I can select any face from where I just want to show the dimension. So we can just hit and place that particular element there. So this is a nice new additional enhancement that has been done in case of linear multi-rebar annotations and the aligned multi-rebar annotations, which allows us to show the dimension of the rebar from the face of that element. Now the next enhancement here, and the last one, is about moving or copying our rebars. So earlier in Revit, rebars were set to adjust according to the size of the element in which they were being copied or being moved. So like for example, if I have placed a rebar in a particular element and I try and copy that rebar and place it in another element which has different dimensions, the rebar used to adjust itself accordingly. So this thing sometimes used to become quite difficult. Now from the enhancement in this 2020 version, if I try and select any element and try and create a copy of it, or if I try and move that particular element anywhere, we can notice that that particular rebar does not adjust itself according to the size of the element or the rebar cover. Now this feature will function up till the value which is that the distance between the cover and the rebar should be less than half of the rebar diameter. So if the distance is less than the half of the rebar diameter, then the rebar won't adjust itself. If it is more than that, then of course rebar will adjust itself. So again, this becomes handy while we are moving or copying our elements from our rebar elements from one structural element to another, so that those rebar elements don't adjust themselves accordingly. They'll just get placed according to the previous shape or the previous size in which they were placed. So this again does not create any new shape. Earlier, whenever the rebar used to adjust itself, Revit used to create a new rebar in the rebar shape browser. So that unnecessary used to increase the number of rebars in the shape browser as well. But now, since there is no new shape that is being created, hence we get no new rebar shapes that are being created as well. So this again helps us in keeping the file size small. So that's it from my side regarding the new features that are there in Revit Structure 2020. Keep visiting our website for more such informative videos. Keep learning. Until next time we meet, it's Rohit Tandon saying thank you to all.